So let's talk about init. Now, each object in Python has something called an init function. Init stands for initialization. This function is run whenever a new instance of that class is created. Whenever a new object is created, its init function is run. Now, this is a very convenient place for us to store setup code that we'll need to be run whenever a new instance of a class is created. The way that we can actually put things into our init function is if we go def _init_, and then we pass it the parameter self, like this. This is now where we can put our initialization code. So we could say print a new instance of my class has been created, aka a new object of class my class has been created. Now what we can do here is we can actually pass this init function different variables, not just self, but also name and age, if we wanted our class to be a person, for example. So let's get rid of this x here, and let's get rid of our old method, because we don't really need it anymore. And we can also get rid of this statement here. What we can do is write self.name, as in the object will now have a property called name, and it will equal this name variable. And we can write self.age equals age. Now you might ask, what advantage does wrapping this in an init function have over just putting it in there? Now what this lets us do is actually pass arguments and parameters when we're creating a new object, when we're creating a new instance of a class. For example, here, there weren't any arguments that we were passing in, whereas now we can actually pass in names and ages. So we could say Bob, and Bob is 36, lovely young chappy. What we can do now is we can go print, and then we can type name is followed by the age, years old, like that. Perfect. So now what happens when we create a new instance of our class? We create this p1 object. What will happen? It tells us that Bob is 36 years old. Now, where object-oriented programming really comes in clutch is the fact that I can have a new object, and I can call it P2, and that can be called Cheryl, and Cheryl can be 26 years old, like so. And now I have two objects. Because they're of the same class, they have these same properties and this same initialization procedure, but they're distinctly different objects. So now what we can do is define our own various different properties and methods inside of this class. We could make a method called greet, for example, like this, and we could pass in self, like, and then we could have it speak. We could make the object say, hi, my name is name, or we'll have to put self.name, there we are, and I am self.age, years old, like that. We've not actually run this yet. If we get rid of our print statements from our init function, which is being run whenever an object is created, the print functions no longer happen at runtime, because when these objects are created, there are no more print statements inside the init function. But now that these two objects are being created, if we run p1.greet, like this, Bob knows to greet us. And now if we make this p2 greet, if we run p2 greet instead, then Cheryl greets us. They both have this same greet method, but a different self is being passed. Now we can actually call this self variable whatever we want, as I touched on earlier. We can actually call it my silly object as an example, and substitute all of this like so. And it will still work. It just matters that it's the first variable here in this list of potential arguments. You need to pass self to init if you want to be able to do anything like this. We just always call it self in Python because it's a lot easier to have a standard for things. So what we can actually do is we can edit properties outside of a class as well. We can actually change Cheryl's name. So let's say Cheryl's an absolute hero, and now Cheryl is called What can Cheryl be called? Otis. Let's call Cheryl Otis, like so. Now, nothing happens because I got rid of the greet statement. But now if we run p2.greet, after we've changed p2's name, there we go. p2 now reports as Otis. p2 now greets us Otis because p2's name is now Otis. We've changed the property from outside the class.